Welcome, Dark Reader, to the dark side of the library. I'm Katie. Today we're going to be going over Sisters of the Lost Nation. This is a book by Nick Medina. It was his debut novel. It wasn't on my radar for the longest time, but I saw it on TikTok, I saw it on Instagram, so I was like, gotta read it. So I did. I read it. So I was very excited. I love Native American folk tales, myths, etc. I'm glad there's more of it that's being spotlit and people are wanting to know more about these myths, etc. And the reason why I say this is because this is supposed to be a supernatural thriller that kind of wove some of those cool stories into this story. So I was excited. So let me tell you about my rating. So just transparent, I like to be upfront. I gave this book about a 3 out of 5. So we're going to talk about the summary of the book, who Nick Medina is, and the rest of what I felt like this book, I guess what my feelings are towards this book. What I feel towards this book. Okay, so here's a bit of the summary. Our main protagonist is named Anna Horn, and she's always looking over her shoulder, whether that's like the bullies that follow her after school or even throughout the school day. We also have these nameless strangers that are kind of wandering the halls at the casino that she works at, and a strange disembodied entity that kind of stalks her every move. But then we have weird and strange things that are happening around the casino that she works at. Girls are now going missing. They're disappearing, all from her tribe. So as these girls are missing and disappearing, Anna's struggling with her role on the res. She's desperately searching for the key and the answers to these missing ladies, whether that's from old myths or from present day things. So when Anna's own little sister goes missing, it becomes pretty dire. She is determined to bring her sister home, whether that is diving into the myths of old or trying to recognize some of the more contemporary issues. It's supposed to be part supernatural thriller and part just regular thriller. And basically, this is a novel about a life as an outcast and the cost of forgetting tradition and stepping up into the role you're supposed to be in. Let's talk about the author Nick Medina. He's a Chicago native. He is also a member of the Tunica Biloxi tribe that lives in Louisiana, and that's where this book is actually set in, which is very helpful. He's done journalism, screenwriting, that kind of thing. One of his, he likes music, but the thing that is most important, that is very, very prevalent, if not the actual theme of this entire novel, is he wants to focus and bring light to the fact that a lot of Indigenous Native American women do go missing, and, nobody seems to care. This book focuses on those dangers and fears that are real that Native American women have to face while they are living on reservations or even when they're off reservations. So let me tell you about my thoughts on the book itself. This is kind of a difficult one to talk about, mostly because I think this is a marketing issue, but maybe it's not, because he's also stated that this is supposed to be supernatural thriller. So I think it's very important to talk about and to bring a story to us that showcases this particular issue of Native American women being missing or murdered, and a lot of those cases go cold. Very important thing to talk about, and I don't mind this being in a way of fiction, in that sort of setting. But the problem is that this book didn't really have a lot of supernatural elements that it was actually talking about. So it's difficult, because I really wanted to love this book, and I wanted it to really I wanted it to be super profound, but it didn't hit all of the marks for me, that's the greatest disappointment, I think, and I hate saying that. So let's get into further of why I actually rated this a 3 out of 5, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. Just a forewarning, this book does deal with a lot of things: sex trafficking, alcoholism, abuse, bullying, like gore. There's a lot of different elements in this book, and it states that in the very beginning. So that's just one thing to be aware of. if you are sensitive to any of those things. Also on this podcast, we will be discussing that a little bit. Not only that, there might be some spoilers as well. So if you want to read the whole story, make sure to go check it out over in your library, Audible, wherever. You can find that in the description down below. Sisters of the Lost Nation. All right, let's begin. So this is based on a fictional tribe, which is pretty cool. Nick Medina has taken many cultural norms, beliefs, folktales, etc., and tried to create his own tribe using a lot of common ground for some native tribes. But for me, the problem is there's just hundreds and hundreds of tribes that I feel like, yes, you can find some common ground here, but yeah, there's a lot of folktales. There's a lot of different belief systems. I don't like mixing it and making it like one thing. But the thing is, here is something that is very similar that many Native American tribes do have to deal with, is that many women go missing or murdered, and the amount of Native American women that go missing and murdered is substantially higher than any other group out there. So that is something that definitely needs a highlight. So here's one of my big issues way up front. This is not supernatural at all. It might kind of feel like it because of the interwoven myths and stories in this book, but it is not. There's a lot of things going on in this novel, and I'm going to try my best to break it down as clearly as I can. So one of the themes, we have many themes. So we have identity. Anna, our main protagonist, is dealing with her own identity as being a Native American for the Dakota tribe. Those belief systems, just some of the contemporary issues that the tribe is facing, the fact that they don't necessarily preserve their stories, and she feels like they should. She doesn't feel like she has a voice, but also her gender identity. She doesn't fall into traditional roles of being a female. She is more like two-spirit, and she isn't necessarily, I guess, shown that that's an acceptable way of being, but she's, but she's got many other amazing special aspects, including like the two-spirit, but like she's like a wise woman as well. She's young, by the way, but the way that she's been described and her traits is that people will listen to her. She has a way with words. The way she speaks to people resonates with people, and she moves people. She also has a whole array of different myths that she knows in her head, and she wants to present those to her people. And even though she's got all of these really amazing traits, she hasn't fully embraced her role in her tribe yet. So there's, like I said, lots going on just with identity. And that is also difficult because throughout this novel, Anna always compares herself with Grace, and that's her little sister that ends up going missing. So right off the bat, Grace is like the pretty sister. She falls more into the gender, norm roles. She is also one who's trying to fit in and do things that maybe she wouldn't normally do, but she's only doing because she wants to be cool. And she's also one of the pretty girls that have gone missing from her res. There's a lot going on here, but the biggest theme is we have missing women who have been missing many days. And this is where things get a little muddy and things get a little blurry for a couple of reasons. So, the first problem that I had with this novel is that, and I think we could do this, I think it was a little too much, was the time jumping. So, there were many moments where I was like, I don't know what time I'm in, and then I realized that Grace was with them versus Grace not being on the res, and then I would understand, oh, okay, we're like post Grace, or we are pre-Grace or whatever. That was my problem, was there was too much jumping around in the timeline. So we would have Anna and Grace together, and then there would be the next chapter is Anna trying to find Grace, but it didn't seem to have like a mutual chronological thing going on necessarily. It didn't gracefully come to this point to where the climax of the book was. It was a little all over the place, a little ambiguous sometimes. This book was also kind of long. The myths and the stories that are interwoven are really fun to hear about, but a lot of some of this internal dialogue that Anna has, it sometimes drags on. There were times where I was just kind of like drifting off. I really enjoyed the relationship that was displayed between Anna and Grace. I don't know, I just felt like it was pretty authentic the way that they were describing it. You know, there were things that Grace would say or do to Anna, or vice versa, that was very sisterly, so it'd be hurtful, but like you process it differently as a sibling, because you're like, okay, I understand where my sibling's at. It doesn't feel good, but you know. So I really liked the relationship, how that developed over time. I felt like it was really strong. But individually as characters, which is weird, I didn't really feel drawn to either of them. Another issue that I had with this novel is that because we are talking about a very important topic like sex trafficking, missing women in indigenous groups, is that I didn't really feel how scary and terrifying it was, because we don't really go into detail about what actually happens to the girls, and it seems to just kind of like magically, oh, okay, this is what happened. I really feel like if we went into further depth and saw some of those grisly moments, this book would be more profound and terrifying at the same time, because it's real. These things are really, truly happening, and that is the terrifying part. It becomes this weird not murder mystery, but just like this mystery novel, but it was still predictable, because Anna's working at the casino, and she's very obsessed with her boss, who's named Fox. And right off the bat, spoiler, you know who all are involved in the missing girls. Like, you just do. It's very early in the novel, but it's such a prime focus, and it takes away from those scary bits. There were some really authentic parts in this book that it kept me reading it. For instance, when Anna is trying to talk to some of her res people that have worked with Fox, just kind of the thought process behind some of this stuff. So like, even though the girls are missing and it seems obvious why people would backtrack and be like, no, it can't be that person because he's a good guy or he's fine, like he wouldn't do anything bad. You know, here's all these moments of them being like a good person. So I liked those moments where people are backtracking, because that's a real experience as well. People just kind of justifying certain people's actions because a few times they were good, and it's hard to see people as inherently evil. But the problem is like, I feel like we needed not just Anna's voice and Anna's internal dialogue. It would have been really helpful to have Grace as well, because she's the one that goes missing. It would have been good to see more of her perspective. We get a lot of her perspective when we are talking about Anna being bullied and how that affects Anna's identity and Grace's identity and how they feel together being a part of the res. But we don't get a lot of the other stuff with the missing and murdered Native American women, what that experience is actually like, or at least alluded to. Those are some of my issues with the book. I thought the writing was really well done. It was approachable. I thought it was a great debut novel. I think the marketing was off. It wasn't a supernatural thriller whatsoever. I can appreciate it for what it is, and that's why I'm a little torn with this review, because it's like, these issues are really important. They are terrifying. I personally am more terrified by real events. Like, supernatural stuff doesn't really get to me, but like, serial killers, this sex trafficking, these kinds of things, abuse, domestic abuse. Those things for me are the most terrifying because they happen all the time and it's horrible. And I think having more spotlight for this issue is very important, but I just don't think it wasn't executed as well as it could have been, especially with the anticipation that it was supposed to be like a horror supernatural thriller. The myths in there were very, very cool. I liked some parts of it. I liked that there was a little bit of like this, maybe there's some supernatural parts in there, but it didn't take off as much as I wanted to. Definitely give this book a go. I think there are some strong points in this, like what it looks like, sisterhood, what it looks like to live on a res, and identity issues, what sort of obstacles you have to go through and hardships. And of course, being more aware of some of those realistic things that are happening today and the effects it has on family members and how people like police officers, people outside of the res don't actually take some of these things seriously. Those are all they were all presented very well in Sisters of the Lost Nation. And of course, the myths are very, very fun. So check this one out. This is Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. If you're looking for some more creepy books, make sure to stay tuned every Wednesday and Friday. And join us on our socials. You can find them in the description down below or at Dark Side of the Library. And make sure to listen to this podcast on your favorite listening app. Subscribe, follow, comment. We'd love to hear from you. And most of all, thank you so much for listening and for watching. And if you have been this whole time, for however long we've been doing this podcast, it means a whole lot to us and we appreciate you. Thanks so much. Have a creeptastic week. We'll see you next time.